Hey Zoe,
Hi, Jackie.
how's it going?
This mic is kind of dusty.
It has been a while since we've recorded, but our listeners don't know that because we're still putting out episodes every 2 weeks.
That is true. That is true. What have you brought us here to talk about?
Okay, before I talk about what we're talking about, I want to talk about my last night.
Fill me in.
Or maybe the last few weeks, I guess. So my first inkling that this was a topic that's worth talking about was I was in the shower a few weeks ago and I'm washing my hair like normal, and suddenly I have like handfuls of hair in my hand, which was probably really gross. So he's making a face at me. But this has only happened to me once before when I was like really stressed right out of college and was feeling very existential about the fate of my life. And so then I like started losing my hair. And so this time a few weeks ago, I'm like realizing I'm losing more hair than normal. And I Google it and Google tells me like, oh, this happens after you're stressed. And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird.
Are you sure it's not that you need a haircut?
No, it's like the like follicles all die at once.
Okay, so we're talking about more hair than that.
Yeah. We're talking like I'm pretty well attuned to like, this is how much I normally lose and this is how much I'm losing. Like, I don't think I'm like balding or anything. It's
No,
just,
you're not balding.
But it was like probably 2 or 3 times the normal hair loss. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then something else I've been noticing recently is that I feel like I have a lot lower capacity for things than I normally do. So like normally I can like go to a party on the weekend one night, and then the next day I'll wake up and hang out with friends and go to brunch and that sort of thing. And recently I feel like I've had the capacity to do like one thing and then I'm toast the rest of the weekend. And so this past weekend it was my boyfriend's birthday on Friday, and so we had the day off. We did a whole day's worth of activities, and then I was so tired from that Saturday and Sunday I just like had a low-grade headache, laid in bed all day, like really didn't do anything with my life.
I have never known you to lay in bed all day, unless you were like really sick that one time.
Yeah, it was really weird. And not like in bed, like probably on the couch, but still like it was shocking to me too how little capacity I had when like the all-day activities we did were like biking around town, like doing a yoga class, going out to dinner. Like, it's not like we were hiking a mountain or anything. We were doing like really normal activities. So then anyhow, wrapping up my story, that was this past weekend. Going into yesterday, which was Monday, I just had like the worst migraine all day. This is day 3 of having just like throbbing behind my eyes. I was like light sensitive. Everything hurt. My whole body was just achy. I'm just like, oh my God, I hate this. I don't really understand what's happening. And I call up my boyfriend and I'm like, hey, I feel awful. Can you come like rub my back or something? So he comes over. He starts rubbing my back. I'm like describing how I have a headache like behind my eyes. And so he starts like rubbing my forehead. And I must be carrying all of my tension in my eyebrows because the moment he starts rubbing my eyebrows, I start bawling.
Oh my God.
And this doesn't usually happen. I don't know. This is really weird.
I'm not sure I've ever seen Jackie bawling either.
Yeah, and it was the weirdest thing. I wasn't sad. I think I was just like carrying a lot of tension and having that kind of like care and like safety of this person I love, like supporting me in this moment when I was feeling really exhausted. I was just like, I don't know, it all came out. So it relates really well to today's episode, which I will explain why, because I've been reading a book on the topic that we're about to talk about, and it was describing exactly what I went through. So, okay, that's what's going on in my life. Can you tell me what we're probably here to talk about?
Emotional dysfunction, stress.
Yeah.
Turning 32.
Yeah, getting old. I would say colloquially the thing I'm here to talk about is burnout, but in my research, I learned that burnout is actually a specific term. So I think the more accurate term for the thing that we think of as burnout is allostatic overload, which is like chronic stress. When you've been under more stress than your body can handle for so long that it starts kind of breaking things. So I think this is probably something that we have all experienced at some time or another.
And that's not, burnout is not like allostatic overload, and stress is just kind of, like, that seems inaccurate to me.
So you're the doctor. You may understand better than I do, but my understanding in doing the research is that burnout is a specific name for the state that people go in when they are overworked. It's typically a work term. And it is really synonymous with like depression. Zoe is now Googling this frantically to confirm. But this is a work term that is synonymous with like you're feeling really hopeless, you're feeling like disengaged from your life. And so it's kind of an emotional state, burnout, versus what I am feeling, what I would say is like the impact of chronic stress or like overloading my system. Allostatic overload is when like I want to be doing things, I'm excited about life. It's not like I'm feeling depressed. What I am feeling though is that my like threshold is significantly lower.
Okay, yeah, so burnout is an occupational phenomenon. So as relating to work, it is a syndrome conceptualized, and this is per the World Health Organization. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed, and it is characterized by 3 dimensions: feeling energy depleted or exhausted, increased mental distance from one's job, feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. So yes, it is specifically related to one's job.
Yeah. So I'm really hesitant to use the word burnout as the like headline for this because what I think I'm describing is not work related per se. It's like chronic stress related, which just can kind of come in any flavor. And like, I'm not feeling cynical. This isn't an emotional state. I would really say this is like a physical state that I'm experiencing and that I think we all either have or maybe will at some point in our life experience. So yeah, we're here to talk about chronic stress.
Oh boy. I know nothing about that.
What is your relationship to stress, Zoe? When in your life have you been the most stressed? How have you handled it? Like, how did it show up in your body?
Stress is a constant state. Oh my God. I'm worried my dad is listening to this and he hasn't heard about any of this. I was probably most exhausted from my intern year of medicine. It took like a month to recoup sleep specifically. I think I was most stressed earlier this year when there was, we'll call a kerfuffle with my program directors. And I was really mad about it and had a lot of self-doubt about it. But generally, I am a stressed and high-strung individual.
So during the 2 discrete events you're talking about, how long did they last? Like, did you reach a point where you were feeling your body experiencing like the wear and tear of the chronic stress, or were they short enough events that you could kind of like ride the higher stress and then go back to your baseline? I guess you were saying for the first one that you had to sleep for like a month to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was a year of medicine, and I mean, you're just surviving. Like, I was working 6 days a week for like 3 months at a time, so you like have time to do your laundry on your day off, and that's really it. And then I think I was just so relieved afterwards and like so happy to be like in my program proper that there wasn't too much like negative impact. I just like did need to sleep a lot. I know that like earlier this year I was like very reserved and like I had to be that way so that I wasn't, because I was worried that anything I did or said would get me into trouble because I just didn't trust myself. But once it was resolved and I got good feedback, it all went away.
Well, I'm glad you got good feedback. So in the moment, were you like, did you have an appetite? What was your relationship to sleep? I don't know, did you lose your hair? Is that just me?
It's not just you. We do have one friend who has always been losing her hair. I did not notice losing my hair. I've never noticed losing my hair. My appetite is pretty disconnected from my emotions, I would say, for better or for worse. I think I was sleeping the same, but I am a jaw clencher, is what I've realized.
Ooh, yeah, that is a sign of stress. Do you sleep through the night?
Yeah, I sleep through the night. I usually sleep through the night. Like, once or twice a month, I'll have, like, a toss and turn night, but I'm not a bad sleeper by any means.
Nice. Well, it sounds like, despite calling yourself a stressed person and having these discrete moments of stress in your life that lasted a decently long time, it sounds like neither of them really pushed you over your envelope into the point of, like, your body not being able to handle it. So you might be a high stressed person, but you sound like you're also you have a high capacity to hold that stress. So
it's just my baseline. So, like, I think, like, there's a lot going on in between the ears, but, like, I have to function. Like, I have to do my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think this aligns with one of the things that I learned in my research, which is that people have different baselines for how much stress they can handle. And no surprise, this is nature and nurture. It's like, were you taught the coping skills for stress? Do you live a lifestyle that naturally includes those coping mechanisms? And, like, do you have the genes that give you more resilience to stress, which we'll go into in a little bit.
I will say, like, I do not see myself as a particularly resilient person. Like, if I am waiting too long, if there's too much traffic, like, I am overboard. So, like, I don't really know what the mismatch is there. I just know that I live very high.
Well, maybe you are at the high end of your capacity at any given time. You just are not overdoing your capacity. That's probably what it is.
And my capacity is very low.
I don't know. You're describing some pretty stressful situations that didn't kill you. So I think your capacity is high and your stress is high too. That's my read on the situation.
Okay, you should text Andrew that.
I will let your husband know that you have a lot of stress capacity. You just might not have a lot of excess stress capacity because you're, like, flying so close to the sun. Okay, so yeah, I am glad you have not experienced any of the, like, really negative impacts of chronic stress. I can talk from my perspective of recently my hair has started falling out at a higher rate. You remember how I had, like, 6 colds this winter? That is another sign. I do not experience this, but, like, IBS and gastric symptoms are really correlated with chronic stress.
I am a very constipated individual, and I have been for 15 years.
We found where your stress goes. It's not in your hair, it's all in your gut. Let's see, what are the other signs? Chronic stress can make sleep really difficult. Something that I learned recently is that the 3 a.m. wake up, which I thought was just like, I don't know, you wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes that specifically is a chronic stress sign because your cortisol is elevated and it's throwing off your circadian rhythm. So if you're waking up at 3 a.m., it probably means that you're carrying too high of a stress load. Let's see. And then carrying weight in your stomach region, like if you're gaining weight specifically in your mid region, that is another symptom of stress.
I also thought that was happening, but I just have body dysmorphia. I don't think that was happening.
I highly doubt that was happening, Zoe. I think that one was all in your head. But yeah, chronic stress is having all these negative impacts. I think the other thing that I'm feeling, like I mentioned, is that I have way less capacity than I used to. And that was really interesting to me and surprising because I'm not somebody who ever goes through periods where I don't have high capacity. I would consider myself kind of similar to Zoe. Like, I have a high threshold and, like, maybe I'm running hot, but I don't often cross that threshold. So to be in a position now where I apparently have crossed that threshold for long enough to now have a lower threshold made me really stop and question, like, why did that happen? What's happening? Could I have seen this sooner? Could I have responded to it? Okay, so I've now talked about a couple different terms. We have burnout, which we've already defined. I've mentioned the concept of chronic stress. I've mentioned the phrase allostatic load or allostatic overload. I'm going to define that one because I think that's the really key point that will help us all understand what we're here for. So, Zoe, have you heard of homeostasis?
Yes.
How would you describe homeostasis?
It is your body's equilibrium between various inputs and outputs. So it's not that things are equal, it's just that like your body is able to manage them all effectively so that you're level.
Yeah, that textbook definition, perfect. So allostasis is a concept really similar to homeostasis, but homeostasis is kind of like the body at rest. It's like what is the like baseline state. Allostasis is a term that refers to the fact that like your body's never actually at rest. There's always changing inputs and outputs. And so allostasis is the body adjusting whatever it's doing inside so that you are staying at that like even keeled state. So the two terms are really related.
So allostasis is the process of getting to homeostasis.
Yeah, I would say allostasis is like, well, homeostasis I think is like the body at rest, like doing absolutely nothing. And then allostasis is like the body doing things, but still maintaining an equilibrium. I read a paper that used a metaphor of a seesaw. And so like, actually, before we get to the seesaw analogy, you're sitting down, right? You stand up. What does your body do? It has to change your blood pressure in order to make sure that you keep having blood go to your brain so that you don't pass out. Like that is an example of allostasis where like you maintain consciousness. And so like your consciousness is static, but the blood pressure and what your body had to do to maintain that consciousness, the homeostasis has not been staying the same. So that's kind of what the difference is. And so the paper I read, which described a seesaw, was saying like, if you are under a lot of stress, like we were just talking about, Zoe, we think you're a relatively high stress individual. Imagine there's a seesaw and one side of the seesaw is all the stress that you're bearing. And your body, to stay at allostasis, to stay balanced, has to enact a decent amount of like stress response in your body. And when it perfectly balances the amount of stress that's input, then you stay in allostasis. But if you are under a chronic stress load, a high stress load, the amount of weight is really high. And so the amount of counteraction has to be really high too, in order for the seesaw to stay stable. And then as a result of that, the moment that the amount of stress changes, so like say you have a really busy work day and then you get to the weekend, or work week, and then you get to the weekend and your stress comes off, suddenly you're at the seesaw, you have a lot of heavy weight on one side, you have a lot of heavy weight on the other side, and suddenly the stress goes away on one side and then your seesaw goes bam! And all of the counteracting of the stress is like hitting you with a sledgehammer. And so this is why chronic stress can be bad.
That's like the antsiness you feel when you go from like having 100 things to do to having nothing to do and you can't sit still.
Yep. Yeah. It's because you've been running on adrenaline and cortisol while you've been counteracting this heavy stress load. And the moment that you don't need that much stress response and you let them go, suddenly you're feeling everything that was going on the whole time.
You're frenetic.
Yeah. Oh my God. I've been so frenetic the last few weeks. Yeah. So that's kind of allostasis. And then allostatic load is the term that refers to like how much weight your body is having to put on the scale to counteract the stress that you're under. And so it sounds like, Zoe, you are somebody who experiences a relatively high allostatic load just on a given normal day, which probably explains why you don't have a lot of patience for the traffic and you're constipated and like you're not someone who's like sitting here skipping through daisies and like chill. But you are also somebody whose body is able to handle the amount of stress that you're getting. And so you are maintaining allostasis. You're just doing it at a relatively high cost.
Yeah, I just think of it as like a basometabolic rate. Like my body is just acclimated to be at a taller seesaw, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and so the reason why the chronic stress can be hard is because then your seesaw is swinging more dramatically whenever the weight comes off or the weight changes. It's not like little tiny changes from little tiny stress amounts. It's like having all these like really aggressive swings. And so that causes wear and tear on the seesaw. Think of like, even if the seesaw is perfectly balanced, it's still like bearing the weight of the weights on either end. And so that's metaphorically why chronic stress can be bad for you, even if you're able to manage it. But then there's another term that I came across, which I think is describing what I've been experiencing recently, called allostatic overload. And this is the term where, like, the weights that are getting put on my seesaw on the other side are more than my body can handle. And so I'm now, like, reacting to the stress in a negative way. It's like eating into me.
Is it that you're reacting negatively or you can't cope? Like your body hasn't had the time to catch up to it. Because it's not chronic until it's been like 3 months, clinically speaking.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think my body has not caught up to the amount of stress that it was under. And I mean, we can talk about the stress I've been under. I think I just like put way too many things together in a short amount of time. And
classic.
Yeah, it really is. When I was 22, I could handle it. I cannot anymore. I felt like I could. I don't know. So allostatic overload is when someone is under a lot of stress, it's more than they can handle. And as a result of that stress, they are now experiencing interruptions to their sleep or energy or their social functioning or their ability to manage their day-to-day life. I would say that sounds like it aligns with what I'm feeling. Like I mentioned, I've been doing a ton of traveling. I've been doing a lot of that traveling back to back. That traveling has been pretty high output experiences back to back, where I'm like connecting with a lot of family and friends who I haven't seen in a long time, going right back into a work trip, going right into another family or friend trip, going right back into a work trip. So there's a lot of airports. There's a lot of not getting the kinds of exercise that I'm used to getting. There's like a lot of time zone changes. I'm not getting a lot of sleep. And so like I was able to manage all of those situations over the 2 months that I was doing that travel back to back. But what I'm feeling now is kind of the reverberation of that, where now that I'm not traveling, my body's going, like we can relax, we can catch our breath. And also we need to like start recouping that energy.
So I guess I was going to say, like, what if this could be like latent symptoms from that undeniably stressful 2 months in your life where you traveled the globe. It could also be the like fine-tuning equilibrium and redefining your homeostasis after that. Like we said, like when you are really, really, really busy and then you're off for the weekend and you don't know what to do with yourself. So it could be these two things happening at once, which you already said. So I'm just being an asshole.
No, that's a helpful reframe. I think it's both that I was under probably too high of a load, and it's also that now that I'm no longer under that load, I'm feeling the weight of that load. I like to think of this as like, if I was working at a company that had a certain amount of PTO, I could like go negative in my PTO, but then I'm negative in my PTO. And I feel like my body was kind of like letting me go negative for a while. And now it's like, hey man, like you're kind of negative. You got to actually like recoup the costs. So why am I now lower in energy? Why does it like have all these negative impacts? Why do people lose their hair? Why do they have gut issues? Why are they waking up at 3 a.m.? Like what is actually happening in the body when you're under this stress? And so I took some notes, but Zoe, you're a doctor.
You all put way too much credibility on this whole doctor thing.
I mean, I can read my notes if you don't got it, but if you got it,
Yes, I can start and then you can put it in layman's terms. So sustained stress will activate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is like your endocrine system, like king of the hill. This determines your cortisol levels, and which then goes and influences literally everything else, not just at like a system level, but at like a genetic level. That takes a little longer, but cortisol does like go into the cells and like changes how your DNA is transcribed. This is a real throwback to medical school, people. And then long-term stress also activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight part of the fight or flight. So you have this elevated cortisol, which means you have more catecholamines, your serotonin, your norepinephrine, your dopamine running through your body. And they do all those things that they typically do just like at baseline. And open evidence is saying this is your allostatic load. So your allostatic load is just generally high. And so acutely, like during an event here and there, when you work out and then you stop working out, like, this is fine, this is normal, your body can adapt to it. But when it's just constantly happening, you're not able to recover, it just becomes maladaptive throughout your body. And so particularly with like your heart and cardiovascular disease, your heart's beating faster. We're going to get into this. You're going to have reduced heart rate variability, buzzword. You'll have increased arterial stiffness. You're at increased risk of clots and forming lipid plaques, which also leads to more clots and thrombus. And when you have like systemic inflammation, when you have chronic stress, you have systemic inflammation. And then you have all these stress hormones and pro-inflammatory chemicals running through your body. And they alter your cell function. And then because you're using more, you have less able to recruit when your body does get a pathogen. So it's less able to like just kind of quietly fight it in the background, and then you get sick. And then visceral fat deposition, so tummy fat, insulin resistance, other features of metabolic syndrome, depression, anxiety. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. Oh, that was very thorough. To put that in layman's terms, in the short term, when you're stressed, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol. These make you feel less pain, feel less hunger, feel less desire for sex. You have more energy. You're like able to handle the stressor. Think like lion chasing you. But in the long term, if you're not effectively ending that cycle and then coming back to your rest and digest cycle, these things that were positive in the short term are now causing the wear and tear. It's and the same sort of like heart beating faster, which is a good thing to run away from in a lion, becomes a bad thing and leads to heart disease if you're experiencing this stress long term. And like you're needing more energy because you're running from a lion leads to you being hungrier, and then you eat more, and then like these things go badly when you're not handling the stress. And so I think we all kind of know this. We're all like, oh, chronic stress bad, life stressful. We're meant to run from lions and we don't run from lions anymore. And so like we don't handle the stress. I think this is probably something that's already in the zeitgeist pretty thoroughly. But I thought it was interesting to dive a little bit more into the science behind it. And Zoe can back me up on this. But my understanding of why I'm feeling low energy now is that some of the chronic stress I was experiencing during those few months of travel had reached the point where they caused the damage. And so like the cellular function changing, I read a lot about like my mitochondria, and they are now apparently damaged and they're producing less energy. And so now I have less energy. Zoe's making a face at me. I'm not sure if this is true.
Neither am I, but I'm skeptical.
Yeah, well, it aligns with my understanding of how long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome works. Obviously, the mechanism is different, where my mitochondria are suffering because they were under a heavy load, and someone who has like long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, their mitochondria were damaged because of the disease that they experienced. But in both cases, the reason why I feel like I have less capacity right now is at least partially due to having less capacity, like having less energy output.
It could also just be because you slept like shit, and so you have like a sleep debt to catch on to.
Yeah. Well, I've actually been sleeping, like, since I got back from all my travels, I've been sleeping 9 hours a night.
Yeah, but you have a debt, so you need to catch up on what you lost from sleeping. But to your point, there is mitochondrial allostatic load, which is a cumulative subcellular damage that occurs when stress-induced neuroendocrine mediators, so glucocorticoids, catecholamines, so steroids, neurotransmitters overwhelm mitochondrial adaptive capacity, transforming mitochondria from energy-producing stress buffering organelles into sources of oxidative damage, inflammation, and cellular injury. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not diagnosing myself with anything, but just saying that, like,
it's not pop science, which is what I'm always on guard for.
Yeah, well, I appreciate both that you're on guard for it and that you're able to look this up live and confirm that the science that I was getting is not fake.
And the decreased energy is literally decreased ATP production. And then you also have more reactive oxygen species and cell death.
Yeah. So I don't know. That sounds kind of scary. So we've talked a lot about like what is stress, how is it, what's happening in the body, why is it bad for you kind of when it gets chronic, kind of what are the things that I'm feeling. But there are two more points that I really want to make from here. The first is like, why do we live in a world that has chronic stress, and why don't we understand how to listen to the signs of stress before it becomes really damaging? Like why is heart disease one of the leading reasons that people die when it's like clearly related to chronic stress? Obviously that's not the only reason you have heart disease, but like a lot of the reasons why people die are related to stress or experience lower quality of life. And so I don't know, why does our modern life not enable effective coping mechanisms? And then the second thing I want to talk about is like, what are the coping mechanisms? What do we do with this information? Where do we go from here?
Capitalism, baby.
Yeah, we don't believe in rest and digest. We want to be on all the time.
And this like ties into an episode I will do far in the future, which is like, why were we so startup pilled? Like, what the fuck was all about this, like, Silicon Valley hustle culture startup pill? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such a good tie-in there. Like, why do we care about working this hard? Like, is it our puritanical roots? Do we just, like, not believe in idleness because it's sinfulness? Is it a form of gluttony? Is it, like, where is this coming from? Why is this our cultural milieu? But yeah, we're living in a world where we don't really understand how to take breaks in a meaningful way. For a while in the 2010s, there was this really sort of exactly what Zoe's talking about, this like hustle culture, like push through. Everyone was bragging about how little sleep they got. Luckily, I think the pendulum is swinging in the other direction, which is what Zoe alluded to, HRV being the new buzzword, which I will get to. For a while, the juices we were steeped in when we were at formative years were very much hustle culture. And I think zooming out from that a little bit, we're also not really taught how to interpret the signs. Like, if you're waking up at 3 a.m., I didn't know, and my parents didn't know. Like, nobody in my life knew that that was a stress response. We were just like, oh, I don't know, like, maybe something woke me up. But that is a sign that your body is more reactive to cortisol because you're running really hot. And so, like, the moment that you're waking up at 3 a.m., that should be a sign to you of, like, ooh, I'm under a lot of stress right now. I need to get better at managing my stress. I need to be under less stress. Like, there are things that you can do if you knew how to interpret that signal.
one time does not make a trend.
One time does not make a trend.
Regularly over the course of like a week or two.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a really good point.
And I will say, like, as part of the circadian rhythm, cortisol does start to rise. Like, it has its first bitty peak at 3 a.m., but, like, it's bitty. It gets larger after you wake up. So it should remain bitty, but it's not going to be low.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, having your cortisol rise makes sense. The fact that it's waking you up is because your baseline cortisol is so high that little bit of a rise was enough to wake you up. This is my pseudoscience understanding. So thank you,
That's
Zoe,
correct.
for...
It's your layman's explanation.
Yes. Yeah.
And I am not a biochemist.
Yeah, we're doing our best here. So yeah, the 3 a.m. wake up, losing your hair, gaining weight in your midsection and finding it hard to manage, always feeling tired, always feeling foggy, not having capacity to do things the same way that you did before, having unexplained IBS symptoms, jaw clenching, like Zoe was saying, constipation. If you're somebody who normally gets a menstrual cycle and suddenly your menstrual cycle is coming late or reduced in volume, migraines, as I had yesterday, headache, shoulder, neck tightness, like these are all signs of stress. And so if you're experiencing these, this is not normal. This is not part of life. This is not just something to grin and bear. Like, these are signs that your body is trying to talk to you. And honestly, they're probably reaching the point where they're shouting at you because they were trying to talk to you in other ways. And we just don't live in a culture that gives us rule books for how to listen to these signs and know what to do with them. And we also don't live in a culture that gives us permission to handle them.
So what are those, like, smaller signs that we're not looking at? If these are the bigger screaming signs that we've already have a problem, what are the smaller signs that we're developing a problem?
Well, I think some of these happen earlier than others. So, like, In my experience, the 3 a.m. wake ups is one that is pretty reactive. Like if I have a really stressful week, I will have a 3 a.m. wake up for the next few days after that. Something like hair loss is a delayed symptom. So if you're getting to the point where you're like gaining weight or having hair loss, these sort of like longer term body changes, that's your body screaming at you. If you're catching 6 colds in a row, like the first cold isn't necessarily a scream. Maybe that's a sign, but by the time you're getting 6 colds in a row, like I have, that's your body screaming at you.
What about the fact that you were literally traveling like back to back to back to back to back and literally just exposed 12 times?
Yeah, but my body, like I'm not somebody who usually gets sick, and I am somebody who still travels a decent amount. I think the fact that I was getting sick so much was the fact that I was already under enough stress that my body was reducing its capacity to handle. Like when you're in that fight or flight mode, your body isn't fighting diseases, it's focusing on running away from the lion. So yeah, I think some of these signs are probably earlier on, and some of them don't happen until the stress has become really chronic, but start paying attention. And like also some of these are probably just things that you live with for a really long time. I have a friend who chronically gets headaches and carries a lot of tension in his shoulders, and like didn't really think about that as a stress sign per se. It was just like, oh my God, I don't know, my life is hard, like maybe I'll get massages. But you can treat the shoulder pain, or you can go, oh, this is a sign of stress. Let me take a step back and let me figure out how to manage my stress. I am finally waking up to the fact that, oh man, I probably stressed my body out a little bit too much. Maybe I damaged some mitochondria along the way. The first place that I wanted to go at this point was to learn more. And I remember a book that I had read years ago called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Have you heard of the book, Zoe?
No.
Okay. I remember people talking about it, but I don't remember who. This was a book that was ostensibly a guide to having a good sex life, but it's actually just about stress. It was like, oh, you're not going to be like emotionally or physically available for sex if you are under a lot of stress and if you're like separating yourself from your body. And so I read this book years ago thinking that it was going to be about like getting in touch with your body in a sexual way, and instead it was just about getting in touch with your body in like a stress management way. Like there was nothing about sex at all in it. I mean, like I guess a little bit, but it was mostly just like managing your sleep, that sort of thing. And the author, I guess after she wrote this book, got so many positive reactions from people being like, this is amazing, but I actually just want a book on stress. Can you write that book next? So she wound up going on and writing a book called Burnout, which is about stress management. And so in preparing for this episode, I read that book. Yeah, anyhow, in the Burnout book, I think a few points that the author makes, I think it's 2 authors actually, that they make that are important. First is that your stress, your body's physiological response, is separate from the stressor, the external metaphorical lion that's chasing you, and you will not be able to outrun the metaphorical future lions if you're not dealing with your current physical stress. And so they call it separating the stressor from the stress, and their advice is like, you need to get your body to get back into that calm rest and digest state as much as possible.
I see this a lot with patients who have like chronic pain sensitization. It's like every sensation is bad, and it's not that. Like the first thing is to identify what the sensation is and not put like a value label on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think that goes back to like people having different stress capacities. An interesting paper I read talked about people with chronic fatigue syndrome, and people with that syndrome who underwent cognitive behavioral therapy actually developed more gray matter in their brain than people who did not. And so like there is a lot of evidence that the way that you are thinking about stress and the like how you're conceptualizing it and how you're responding to your inputs really changes the response. Like if you, to your point, if you're labeling everything as, oh my God, this is pain right away, then your body will react as though it's pain and then be extra sensitive to pain in the future. If you're able to reframe it to be like, that's just a sensation, let me just feel the sensation and like take that step back and like have a reframe, that reframe goes a long way to having your body react less strongly. So yeah, I guess there's probably 3 things to do. There's the like, calm down your body when it's in the fight or flight and there's no longer an imminent threat that's, you know, there's no lion that's chasing you. There's longer term, learn how to reframe it so your body isn't as reactive. And then there's also like, what is the thing that is making your body reactive, and can you reduce your exposure to that thing? Those are probably the three.
And I think the third thing is actually the first thing you should do is like, what is triggering me? What do I feel? Bad, good, indifferent. What do I do about it now? What do I do about it in the long run?
Yeah. Yeah. But the book pointed out like that can't be all that you do. And I think a lot of people, when they think about, oh my God, I'm really stressed, they jump right to like, well, I had a hard, conversation at work. And so like that was what was stressing me. Let me solve that problem, without acknowledging the fact that their stress response was also like, A, is still living in their body, and B, is a result of the stories that they told themselves. So you need to handle all three of those.
And it's like, you need to handle it. Like, we live in a world where shit happens all the time and it is happening all around us. We can't avoid any of it. Our boundaries are not for other people to abide by. They're for us to manage. And so you need to figure out how you can cope in this world. You can't avoid any of it and set rules that you expect other people to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how do you manage it? How do you like convince your body that it's fine and calm down and like there's no longer the lion chasing you? Because part of the problem is like we live in a world where they're not actually lions. You're like stuck in traffic, but then you don't run away from traffic. You don't complete your stress response cycle.
It's traffic. You have nowhere to go.
Yeah, you have nowhere to go. You're just caught in it. And so you just like stew in your stress hormones for the half hour that you're commuting or however long you commute. And then you get home and then that's it. And then you're just like, well, the stress is gone, so I should be fine. But the fact is your body just stewed in stress hormones for half an hour. So what do you got to do about that? The first thing you have to do is convince your body it's safe. Which an easy way to do that is like burn off the stress hormones, do some exercise. Cardio is one of the best ways to do that. Like go on an easy run, go on a bike ride, lift weights, jump around, shake out, that sort of thing. If you're not somebody who has the capacity to move your body in a really meaningful way, you can also get this sort of like calm rest and digest from having a really long hug with somebody, having a really good belly laugh, like find ways to convince your body that it's safe. And doing that with other people is really helpful. And like finishing the like physical body stress cycle. So that's one thing you can do.
How recent were these papers? Like, was it like in the age of doom scrolling where like people are turning to that as like a source of calming, and maybe they're looking for laughter and then they just get trapped in the scroll?
Yeah, I didn't read any papers that specifically talked about that, but I did read a Substack article about a woman talking about that. And she was, I think my assessment of people who are like reaching for something like social media, and I do this too, is like you're doing that because when you're feeling stressed, you want things that make you feel good. And so you're reaching for the dopamine, but you're not completing the stress cycle. You're not surrounding yourself with people. You're not having a long hug. You're not running and actually doing things that complete your stress cycle.
You're distracting yourself.
They're like numbing and seeking dopamine. It's kind of like if you're hungry and you reach for candy, like it's like a hit, but it doesn't give you the nutrients you need. And so it makes a lot of sense why we do it. I think we all do it at various times, but taking that second to be like, why am I doing this? What do I actually need is really helpful. In that moment, are you feeling wired? Are you jittery? Did you just sit in traffic? Do you need to go on a run? Do you need to go on a walk? Do you need to go on a bike ride? Do you need to just like be held by somebody until you calm down, until you start crying because they massaged your eyebrows? Like, honestly, that's what happened to me last night. Was I was carrying a lot of stress from previous days in my body, and it had manifested itself as a headache. And until I had somebody just like hold me, I wasn't getting it out of my body. So manage the stress. Other things that you can do to increase your capacity for stress. I think we've alluded to some of these already, but sleep is huge. If you're not getting enough sleep, that is just going to compound the stress. So doing everything you can to protect your 8+ hours a night of in bed time is really important. Zoe is raising her eyebrow at me, but like...
No. This is relevant in my life because I am, as I have said, a chronically stressed person. And I think I have recently just been dramatically overwhelmed, like allostatic overload. You know, I was talking with my husband and he's like, well, why are you waking up so early? Because we leave at the same time, maybe 10 minutes different, but I'm getting out of bed at like 6:50 and you're getting up at like, your alarm is set for 5:20. And he's like, we can make it for your alarm to be set at 6:30. I was like, I don't know that that's true, but it's like, now my goal is like, my alarm is set at 6 at night before I go to bed. Like, everything I need to leave the house is prepped. The coffee is set on auto. I've only done it once, so I'm not going to make a trend out of it. But, like, it is something I'm looking forward to observing.
Yeah. Yeah, I did read a handful of papers that all said that getting enough sleep is the single most important thing you can do for your stress capacity. Because while you are sleeping is when your body is processing through all of the hormones, processing through everything you learned, like recovering your muscles from the physical stress that you put it under. So yeah, I think especially if the thing that you're doing instead of sleeping is doom scrolling or like other things that you're trying to do to manage your stress, just sleep more. So I report back. I'll be curious to hear how it goes. Okay. Yeah. So try and get more sleep. I know it's hard, super important. We already talked about completing the stress cycle through having a community, spending time with people, having a hug, going on a run, that sort of thing. And then the other thing that's really important, which I'm struggling with right now, is just reduce your exposure to the stress and your demand density. Like one paper I read talked about doing things like bucketing your decision making, like trying to offload the number of times that you're being exposed to stress so that instead of having 5 small hits of stress in a body that doesn't know how to make them small and is actually making them big, have like 3 hits of stress. So if you're going to have big hits, then you can try and make fewer of them.
I think the first example that comes to mind is like, you're not having your email notifying you. You are setting up like 2 to 3 times a day where you check it. Because like, I'm just thinking like, that's really hard to do when realistically we have to work and like get to point A from point A to point B.
Yeah, I know. I think for the sake of this episode being a normal episode length, we're going to be focusing on like individual things that individual people can do or not do to the extent that they have capacity. But like, I do wish that we had more capacity in this conversation to kind of zoom out and be like, it's kind of fucked up that like the stress that you're carrying on your shoulders because of how poorly engineered our world is like getting solved through like, get more sleep, eat your vegetables. Like it's not your fault that you're this stressed. We live in a world that makes you this stressed. And so like, yeah, bucket your emails, do as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, it ties into the episode that was last released at time of recording, which is the middle class episode. Whatever. It ties into the middle class episode, which really started as this idea that like Beyonce doesn't have the same 24 hours in a day. So the more money you have to outsource these tasks, the more time you have to like devote to whatever fulfills you. And like, if you're being fulfilled, you're getting eustress. So you might be stressed, but it's good stress. It's not necessarily bad stress. And you have more time to like go to the gym and sit down. And I'm just thinking like, my husband and I, we just paid to have our house deep cleaned. And like, I could have cried in that moment coming home. Like, it was so nice. And it was such a relief. And it was such like literally a weight off of my shoulders. But like, that is not something we can afford on a regular basis. And it's not something many people can afford, period.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a really good example of how the society large picture situation impacts individual people differently. I did read a study that was looking at like who experiences high allostatic load, and the answers are not going to surprise you. It is marginalized people, it is lower socioeconomic status people, it's people who experience discrimination, people who are in really difficult relationships, people who are experiencing health issues. Like, those are the people who are under a lot of stress. And a lot of the studies were talking about race and like how that impacts people. Like, Black women carry a much higher statistically significant allostatic load, which there are ways of measuring allostatic load, which I didn't read the methods part, so I can't tell you how, but like there are ways to compare this across people. And like, there are groups of people who experience higher allostatic loads than other groups of people. So as much as we're telling you, like, bucket your emails, like, that's not going to solve the world. It's just going to maybe give you some coping skills that will make you be able to handle your allostatic load a little bit better.
Yeah, and like anecdotally speaking, like the patients who I've seen who have this chronic pain syndrome, they're typically like younger single moms who just like don't have the resources. And it's like, there is nothing I can do as a clinician to help your pain. It's like, it all comes down to you and how you choose to like take control of your life and reframe these things. But it is also like a systemic conversation, more importantly.
Yeah, but that's a good intro to the last thing that the research says is really impactful to stress management, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's the reframing, and it's also finding meaning in life. Fun fact, the people who have lower allostatic loads are people who find strong meaning in their life. A lot of them are people who are deeply related or deeply devoted to a religion and a religious practice. And so meaning is a tool that we have to combat allostatic load and like put things in perspective, and like the reframe of the three things that we talked about previously. This is the second one of how do you talk to yourself about what you're going through, and what is the story that you tell? How do you put it in perspective? Because that is a huge part of this, and it's probably not something that you were taught, because it's not something that a lot of us were taught. So seeking out ways to learn that will be huge.
Resilience is like really important here, because we could talk about the systemic oppressions and we could actually have the ability to enact the systemic change that will create a more helpful ecosystem, but like it does all come down to you and like what you're going to do with it at the end of the day. No one can force you to do anything, and no one can, like, you can bring a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink.
Yep. Yeah, it is both not your fault that you are under a lot of stress, and also it is in your control to manage how you process your stress and how much stress, to an extent, how much stress you expose yourself to, and definitely how you relate to that stress and the story you tell yourself about that stress.
Beautifully put.
Yeah, cool. Those were the high level things I wanted people to learn about chronic stress and what to do about it. I can talk about what I'm planning on doing right now while I am feeling this, while I'm working through my chronic stress. But Zoe, do you have any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Anything else that we should say to tie a bow on it?
No. I think the way you just framed it is, yeah, beautifully put.
Perfect. Okay, so actually, before we do go there, the one last thing I wanted to mention is HRV, because we talked about it and I didn't mention it here. The reason we've been alluding to this the whole conversation is because in preparation for this episode, I downloaded 4.5 years of my Aura data and I threw it in Claude, and I said, Claude, make me long-term graphs of my key metrics so that I can spot trends. And I plotted that graph, and then I put life events on the graph. And when you compared the two, it's really nuts to see how they trend. And so heart rate variability is the amount that your heart rate changes as you're breathing, which there's a lot of science behind it, but the TLDR is when you are in a chill state, your heart rate has a higher variability because it is more responsive to what's happening in your body. And then as you're really stressed, you have a lower variability because it has to be in the fight or flight. So it has to be ready to go. And the TLDR is I actually saw trends that were related between my heart rate variability and the chronic stress that I was under at various points in my last 4.5 years. So we'll put this in a Substack if you want to learn more. But all that to say, if you are somebody like me who gathers data on yourself, you can probably spot these trends in the data if you're looking at a large enough level. Now that we've talked about that, that is a metric that you have access to that in theory speaks to your the amount of stress that you're under, but we'll write about it in a Substack for more information. I'm not going to go into all of it now. What am I doing with this information? I'm now learning that I am somebody who has recently experienced a lot of stress. My body has been telling me in various ways over the last few months, like, hey man, you're under a lot of stress. Maybe you want to chill out. And then I just talked about what are the ways that you manage stress in general, like how do you process it? And so of the things I'm doing, first, I'm prioritizing supportive movement right now. Cardio is super important for giving your body the signal that it is safe and it processes the stress, and it also increases your like capacity. So I'm trying to add more movement into my life. But kind of counter to that, I'm trying really, really hard to listen to the voice in the back of my head that is saying yes or no when I'm being invited to plans. Specifically, I'm bad at it in general, but especially right now, I'm finding that voice is saying no a lot more than I'm used to. Like I said, this past weekend, we celebrated my boyfriend's birthday on Friday. I did nothing on Saturday or Sunday. And this was a holiday weekend. Like, I'm not somebody to not do things, but like every morning I'm waking up and I'm being like, do I want to do something? And it's like, no, I can't. I don't want to. And so if you're a friend or a family member and I've been saying no to you, I apologize, but like, I just don't have it in me right now. And that's been a hard struggle because I want to be a people pleaser. I want to show up. I care about my friends. I've been doing so much traveling. I haven't been seeing my friends as much as I want, but I just like, unless I'm reducing the burden on my body and on my brain, I'm not going to start feeling better. So similarly, I'm also learning how to communicate about my lower capacity right now in loving ways. I'm trying to tell the people who are in my life, like, hey, I love you. I'm not trying to blow you off. I want to prioritize you to the extent that I have capacity, but I just don't have the same capacity that I have previously. I think it'll come back in a few months. I'm just not there right now. Another thing I'm working on is gratitude. My body can handle a lot. I've put it through a lot, and I just really want to be grateful that it's carried me through, and like all of the stressful travel that I've had this spring, like I was able to do them all. I like caught these little colds, but like I'm able to make it on and off of planes and like show up with people and like have important work meetings, and like I was able to do it all, and I'm just so grateful that my body can do that, and I'm just trying to lean into that gratitude. Another thing, I'm trying not to lose focus on the bigger picture. I'm trying to look at the forest and not the trees. So like an example is the 4.5 years of aura data that I crunched. Like looking at it on a 4.5 year trend, I spot a lot of clear macro trends, but I'm not getting hung up on the little things. Like if I have one bad day, if I wake up at 3 a.m. once, if my HRV is a little bit lower now, like that's not the level of thing that I want to pay attention to. I really want to...
You want to look at the forest for the trees. Like the HRV data, like it provides clarity, but it's not something to cling onto with every activity you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think spotting the trends, like the first cold, not a big deal. By the time it hit 6 colds, like that's a sign. Like seeing the patterns and learning to recognize when those patterns are trying to tell me something, and like keeping that kind of high level view. I'm not handling this perfectly. I definitely feel frustrated that I don't have the same capacity that I'm used to having. And so I kind of went on like a little bit of a panic thrashing at the cage moment, and I bought a lot of beans, and I contemplated getting a cat, and I planned and then I canceled a camping trip, and I bought myself a really nice bikini. Like I'm definitely like kind of spinning a little bit right now, but I think that's normal.
What do the beans have to do with anything?
They have a lot of fiber, and so they're supposed to be good for me. And fun fact, I've been eating a bowl of beans every day, and I'm hitting my fiber goal every single day.
Well, yeah, you're eating a lot of beans, but okay. Anyway, moving on.
What I'm feeling right now is that I do not have the kind of capacity that I want to be having. And so my first instinct is like...
You're not making great decisions. You're being very impulsive.
That was an impulsive reaction. And like, I'm kind of grasping at like things that will make me feel better. Like, I don't know if you get this, but I periodically, if I exercise hard and I don't drink salt water, then I get a headache afterwards. And in that moment when I have that headache, it's too late. And so I'll like chug a lot of water thinking that that'll fix the headache, and it just makes it worse. And then I'll chug salt water thinking that that'll help, and it just makes it worse. And it's like kind of, I'm in that moment of like, it's too late. I've done the damage. I just kind of need to like sit with it, and I'm really bad at sitting with it. And so I'm like shaking the bars of the cage. But just to say like, I'm not handling it perfectly. But if the worst thing I did is I bought 20 pounds of beans, I think that's not the end of the world.
Whoa. This episode is going to be called Jackie Bought 20 Pounds of Beans, and now we need to talk about it.
I've never once in my life made cooked beans from them being dried before I bought 20 pounds of them. But now I have, well, I've eaten 2 pounds. So now I'm down to 18 pounds of beans. I'm doing great, guys.
I thought you were worried about how farty you were.
I got Beano. And also, it turns out if you eat beans every day, your body figures it out.
Yeah, well, farting means you have poop, and so you're eating beans, so you're pooping more, so you're probably less farty in general.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, it's a little silly. I did not need to buy 20 pounds of beans, but, when desperate. Okay, so I think I'm down to my last two things. That was the negative. The next one is just I'm grateful that I have the capacity in my life to slow down and say no to things, and I'm trying to really see the upside of it. I've been working on knitting a blanket. Actually, I have the blanket right here if people are curious. Look at this blanket. Oh, it looks like a blanket.
Oh, wow. You're, really doing it. You have to count and, keep track and everything.
Yeah. So I'm just really trying to lean into the upsides of having a slower life right now. And on that note, and especially to counteract the panic buying of 20 pounds of beans, I have started a daily meditation practice again. And I'm also finally, as a callback to our New Year's resolution episode, I'm doing it.
Well, that's funny because I'm okay, half of these things, Jackie, you've been talking about for 10 years now. You need to exercise more, or you need to, say no to more things. So, is this changing your resolve? This data, this 4 years of data, is it changing your resolve?
Ooh. I don't know. I think there's always going to be a tension here between I like being busy and I like having a high capacity. I think the resolve right now is everybody needs a break, and I haven't given myself a break in a really long time. And my HRV, I'll include it in the Substack. It went from being 55 average for the last 10 years to the last 2 months. Now that I'm finally letting the stress off, it's up at 75. I don't know that this period of slowness feels sustainable to me. Like I said, I'm shaking the walls of my cage, but I do think I'm embodying the feeling of slowing down and the upside of that, and also the necessity of it. And so I think it's a good reminder that maybe next time I shouldn't let my body break before I give myself a meaningful break. And I've taken small breaks before, but to your point, for 10 years now, I've been talking about how I need to do less, and I'm not doing less until I'm broken. So I should do less more often. I did not connect that dot until you made me right now, and now I'm mad at you.
We'll talk about it on a different episode.
We'll talk about it later. Okay, then the last two things I'm doing, which are also supported in the research around energy and capacity, is I'm taking creatine and magnesium.
That's so funny. We were talking about creatine earlier today, and it is kind of useless. Just drink water.
Okay, I've read a lot of studies that said that creatine is one of the best things you can do for yourself.
I wouldn't put it that high.
Well, yeah, not as high as a vitamin D supplement if you're low on vitamin D, but
I think generally the thing with supplements, I do take magnesium, but a lot of magnesium actually does help you poop, and it is the only thing that helps me poop. TMI maybe. The thing with supplements is it's just really expensive urine at the end of the day. Just eat a balanced diet. But you do you, girl.
Yeah, I don't know. What I've heard about creatine is that it gives your body and brain more of a, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but you can use ATP when you're working out or thinking hard, or in life when you need energy. And then creatine donates a phosphorus or an atom or something to a different thing that your body can use kind of in a pinch. And so this is why creatine is associated with bodybuilders or something. It gives you a little bit more push when you're doing the all out pushes. But apparently, especially for women, it's really good for just giving you more capacity. It's supposed to help with foggy headedness and other energy related symptoms. So
okay, enjoy.
Yeah, I'll link a study. Y'all can take creatine if you want.
I mean,
or
it's
not.
hard to know. You're making all of these other changes at the same time. You're not going to be able to draw a conclusion, but
no,
your kidneys
I'm not
are
doing
fine,
this.
So it's
I'm
fine.
not doing this scientifically. I'm shaking the walls of my cage, buying 20 pounds of beans and eating creatine every day in a desperate attempt to have more capacity. I'm not very good at this, but that's what the meditation practice and the gratitude practice are for. I'm trying to balance them out, where I know I'm being a little bit silly, and so I'm also trying to lean into it. But yeah, shit's kind of hard when you're used to having one capacity and you don't anymore.
And that's what it means to enter your 30s. Man, do you feel it?
Yeah. Okay, Zoe, what advice do you have for your 20-year-old self?
Oh my God. Eat more beans? I mean, I feel like it's the same every time. Like, don't take yourself so seriously. But I think, like, genuinely, as I'm trying to do now, is, like, prioritize sleep over everything else. Give way more. Like, there's a meme in medical school. It's like, you can have great grades, a great social life, and, like, great sleep. You can only have two of those things. Oh. Two of those things. Two of those things. And for me, anytime it's between sleep and something else, sleep is getting on the back burner. And it's hitting me hard right now, and I need it now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. Imagine how much more well-rested you'd be if the last decade you'd been sleeping 8 hours a night. I think the most important thing I'd tell my 20-year-old self is, like, listen to your body more, which I think I gave as an answer for a different one, but, and probably start a meditation practice sooner. Like, I don't want to be shaking the walls of my cage. I want to just be like, yes, I'm sitting in a cage right now, and this is lovely, and I'm grateful for it.
You want to have the tool already.
Yeah, I don't want to have to be building the tool while I'm in this depleted state. I want to have had the tool for years now. So I think that's the advice I'd give myself, is, like, listen to your body and also give yourself the brain tools that will ultimately enable more capacity and resilience in the future, though that's not the reason to do it necessarily, but it will help me in this moment.
I'll give a plug for, I used to work for a company called Movement Genius, and they have a lot of toolkits about how to slow down and listen to your body and give a creative outlet. So if you're, like, really struggling with, like, I have all this excess energy and I only have 5 minutes to spare, maybe check out Movement Genius, and they'll give you a lot of creative tips and tricks and tools for your belt.
Nice. I like it. Cool. Well, that was my episode. Thanks for coming on the ride with me. Get some sleep.
I need to eat dinner first and get ready for tomorrow.
My God, girl. Sleep in tomorrow morning. Sleep till 6:30. You got this.
I have work to do.
And you have sleep to do.
Thanks for listening. Now it's time for the obligatory sign-off, except for the part where we thank our amazing producer and editor, Jay.
Jay, we could not have done this without you. But also, listeners, we couldn't have done it without you either. So please like and subscribe. You can find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps.
And all of your favorite social medias at AfterMashPod.
And your least favorite social medias too, for the record. And if there are any topics you would like us to cover, leave us a comment, slide into our DMs.
And until next time, this is Life After MASH.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.